All right, so what I'm going to do is essentially go through the entire process of everyone getting the initial email to have their login information and then going to the site and actually logging in with that information. And then I'll do kind of a brief rundown of what you'll experience once you do get to that particular site and how to navigate it and the different resources that are available there. So first of all, what you should see up on the screen, and somebody let me know if you can't see it, but what should be up on the screen right now is essentially kind of a screenshot of what that initial email typically looks like. As you can see at the very top of the email, typically we'll always attach a guide to the student portal. So it's going to be a lot of the same information, only in print form with a few pictures and things like that. Those pictures and that guide isn't necessarily tailored to these specific courses through Gear Up Georgia. So it's kind of nice to be able to go through this so you can see just kind of the specific resources that you'll have. But it is a great way and a kind of a refresher for just some of the tools that are available because that's the same throughout all of those different courses. In this initial email, you will have very specific instructions for logging in. The first will be to go to this website here, secure.princetonreview.com. Your username will always be your email address, and your password will be welcome21, typically, or some version therein, and you'll see this in your particular email as it comes to you. A couple of notes with your username: the email address that will be tied to the account itself will be of the student that is registered. And one other key point to make is we always send out these particular welcome emails to the addresses that we have on file. So if the address that receives this email is the student address, then that's the address that you want to use for the username. So while the parents may also get this particular email on copy, and they should, it's the student address that gets this email that you'll want to use for actually logging into the site. Going to the site looks like this. So this is what the site looks like once you put in that URL that we just looked at. You will come to this particular login page. You will put your email here, and you'll put your password here and click sign in. Once you do that, it will usually ask you to fill out a few kind of survey questions in terms of just where you go to school, some of your goals and goal schools and things like that, just to kind of help kind of pre-fill out the information that will then be on your student portal as well. And once you have filled out that information, you will come to a particular homepage. It should look something like this, only your name won't be Gear Up. So you'll have a couple of options here, and you may have more. So it's important to note that you may have some other squares here that have additional courses if you've done other courses either with us directly or through Gear Up as well. I know that some people are in or have been in the ACT 101 courses or SAT 101 or fundamentals courses. Those may also show up here as well, especially if it's been recently. And what you'll be able to do is for the self-paced items, they will be labeled as such, just like this. Say we want to go into the SAT self-paced portal, we would just click the open course button. And the first thing you'll see, if this is the first time for you logging in, is a series of pages that kind of guide you through the setup process. So for one, you'll get kind of an intro video that you can watch if you so choose. It's going to kind of go over some of the things that I'm going over right now. If you hit this little arrow, you'll kind of skip through and you can see, okay, what colleges am I looking at? And you can just type in a particular college. Since we were just talking about North Carolina, if we wanted to add any to the list here, say for instance, we wanted to look at UNC, Chapel Hill. We could go here. It does give us a little brief rundown of some of the information for each particular school, including the average scores, how many are enrolled, the average GPA, and the average tuition as well. We could click the plus button, and that'll add it to our list of target schools. These are already kind of pre-filled out earlier, so it'll add it down here at the bottom for us. And then once we're ready and we have our list of colleges here, We'll hit the next arrow, and we can set what our goal scores are going to be. So in this case, let's say in particular, we're just gunning for about a 1200, and maybe we're a little bit better in the verbal section. So we want to push that one just a little bit more. We can set that, and this is always adjustable later, either up or down, just kind of depending on how you're trending. We'll say our prep date is going to be today. Oh goodness, SAT date. Somebody help me out real quick. What's the next official?
March 13th.
13th, right around the corner. So let's say we were going to do that a little less than a month, but we're going to get some prep in. We set that date. Considering how soon it is, we're probably going to want to look at one of these schedules down here in my case, and I'll just go with, we're going to do 1 hour every day during the week, but giving our weekends off.
Wesley, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you make your screen any larger?
Oh, sure. I realize, yeah, I do have, there we go. How's that?
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. So in this case, yeah, we'll make it so that we've got 1 hour Monday through Friday, just as an example. And this will kind of help tailor our plan. So as we get started here, it's typically going to direct us to try to take a test to start with. And this is highly recommended because what you'll want to do and what you will see is that once you do take a test, we're going to skip it for now and make them sad. I know. But once you do take a test, you'll see that this section over here will actually fill out with information from your score from that test. And that will start to inform some of the tasks that they'll give you for the day, because this will kind of give you a natural study plan based on how you already performed on that test. So say you had some issues with some of the algebra and the math, it may start you off with some algebra. Typically what it's going to do is try and start you off with things that are going to have a high impact for your particular score, and you'll be able to kind of go from there. At any time on this homepage that we've gotten to, you'll be able to see your target score over here and your official test date, as well as the colleges that you chose over here on the list to the right. Down at the bottom of this study page, this is where you see the daily tasks that I mentioned. So typically this would kind of fill out with specific modules and things that you can go through that are tied to whatever you did on the test and how you performed. In this case, it's just kind of giving us some of the things that are laid out from our typical, almost like a classroom syllabus. So it does still kind of pull from some of these things and these sources to kind of give you some places to start. If you go to the weekly planner view, here you'll be able to see a little bit of what it's thinking for supporting your prep throughout the week. And since we filled in, hey, we want to be looking at some modules and test prep work during Monday through Friday, it's going to do that prep through the week like this. And then oftentimes it'll try to get you to do an official test on the weekend, especially since we didn't start off with this particular test. It's trying to have us take this test as soon as possible. So in this case, it puts it for this particular Saturday. And a similar function happens when you hit the monthly review. It's just going to be a similar overlook for progress throughout the entire month view. And so you'll be able to see your study days, your practice test days, and essentially just kind of gives you this custom built course specific to both what your test date is, as well as your goal score and how you're already performing on any particular practice test. And this will change and update as you take more tests and get different scores. All right. Next, we're going to go over to the test tab. So obviously it did start us off and kind of offer us to take a particular test to start with. However, in this case, since we didn't, we always have the option to go in and take a test at any time. And you will see that it typically will have a section of required tests, because typically in our usual prep setup, we like to have students take at least 3 tests, sometimes 2 or 3, just kind of depending upon what the timeline looks like for the start of the prep and the actual official test date. So in this case, you'll see 3 tests under required tests. You don't have to pay too much attention to the actual number here. This does correlate to some things. Specifically, it tends to correlate to, in the SAT's case, that big blue test book from College Board, those particular tests. So if you do know that you've already done some SAT prep work and you know that you've done a particular test in there, maybe you've already done test 5, this just kind of gives you a hint, hey, you might want to skip this particular test 5 and go into a different one that you haven't done. If you haven't done any of those, you don't have to worry about that at all. And if for some reason you've done all of those, then we have additional tests as well that you'll be able to do. So if you go down to supplemental test section, you'll see test 3.0. And then again, these official study guide tests that kind of pair with these up here, 5, 7, and 8, as well as some supplemental tests that we have specific to the Princeton Review that you'll be able to take as well. One other thing I want to highlight before we go to the single section test is that you have the option to take it as either a paper and pencil version or completely online. If you were to click paper and pencil, you have the option to download a PDF of the exam, and obviously you can print this off so that you can actually take the test there physically where you are on location. And then from there, you can just launch a bubble sheet, just like that. And then you can use this virtual bubble sheet in conjunction with your paper test to be able to still score your test online so that you will be able to get your test score immediately without having to, you know, still bubble everything onto paper and then kind of convert that online yourself. So for us, we are going to end this for now. Just pause this test. As you see, whenever you do hit pause, you have the ability to resume that test and jump right back in. Another function of these paper and pencil tests is you will have the ability to set an online proctor for the test. And we have the online proctor available for both the standard time, time and a half, and double time accommodations for the test. So you'll be able to select the appropriate one for yourself there and go into taking that test as we just saw. Lastly, the online portion of it. Say we wanted to take any of these tests that have the online option here, we would just click the online button, and now it's going to launch us right into a testing portal for this test. We can choose how we want it timed, again, timed, time and a half, and double time, or to take it completely untimed. And once you hit start in this case, it's going to guide you step by step through the test as if you were taking this particular test completely online. So here you will actually get all of your questions one at a time. You will answer your questions, and then by the end of the test, obviously, then you'll get your score. So what I want to do right now, since I've already kind of gone through part of this test section, I'm about to hit the single section test as well. While I'm going through the single section test, immediately after I get through, I will ask, in case anybody has any questions up to this point, we can kind of cover some of that. So be thinking about that as I go through this next part. The supplemental test single section test portion is going to be exactly what it sounds like. So you have the option to take just the reading. Perhaps you have some particular goals in mind for getting your reading score up, then you can take just the reading section tests to look at those. Same thing for writing and language or math, and both the calculator or non-calculator active sections for that as well. All of these are available just strictly online because these are actually built specifically for us. So no versions of these exist in the paper and pencil format. So these would just be some online tests that you could just hop right on, take those tests, and just kind of get the single section score for practice and things like that if you want to work on your timing for these particular sections, especially things like reading. All right, so at this point, we have covered just logging in, the initial setup, what that looks like in your main study page, and then what the test page looks like. Are there any questions so far, or even Missy or Dawn, anything in particular that you might want me to highlight here on these two particular pages or logging in that I haven't covered so far?
So I have two questions, but I do
Sure.
want to let the student and parents go first.
Sure.
If they have any.
Mhm.
I haven't seen any in the chat, so you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type some questions in the chat that way. And I'll give you some time to think and go ahead and ask my question, two of them. So if you select Proctor for real time, does it give you notices, or is there a timer that's counting down, or does it at the end just kind of like stop?
Sure. So for the paper, for instance, for the paper and pencil Proctor, if we were to go to online Proctor, what it is, it's actually this. So it's a video, right?
Okay.
So this would play, and you don't obviously have to keep the actual video itself open as long as you can hear it. So it will be as if you have an actual proctor there, because it's somebody who actually sat and recorded their proctoring section. So you will have all of your sections broken down. You will get all of the same prompts that you would get from a traditional proctor in person. They will say all of that same kind of standard proctor language that's common for all the official administrations. You'll get all of your breaks. All of that will essentially be laid out explicitly for you. And then if you do happen to have this up, it kind of highlights exactly where you are, where you should be in each of these sections, as we see here.
That's really cool. That's just mimicking the test as close as it can get. I did have a question that I should have asked from slide 1 in terms of, do we have, when the email comes about logging in, does it come from a particular person?
Oh, yes.
Is there a particular email address? And what does a student do if they've never received it? They know they applied for an account, but they haven't received anything.
So what I will do, I'll bring this back up, because yes, that was actually something I did want to look at here. Typically, the email will come, it doesn't come from any one specific person per se, but it will always come from somebody with an @review.com email address. In this case, today, the latest one came from Patrick Snipes at review.com, and because he's one of the people that do it for us. So it's either Patrick Snipes, Rachel Hurwitz, sometimes even myself, or Felicia Cash. And it will always be at review.com. So you'll be able to know exactly what kind of address to look for there. The other thing is that's important to know is that you've got these emails typically will go to sometimes a spam folder or some sort of other folder. So oftentimes we try to say, hey, definitely check your spam folders just in case, because sometimes these will automatically get filtered, just kind of depending on what your firewall looks like. So if for some reason you don't see it, then usually you would be able to reach out to me. I would be able to get you this information to you. Typically, though, even if for some reason you don't see it, as long as we can verify that we've got your information, we got you in the system, this actual login information is always going to be the same. So you could go into that particular site, which is just the Princeton Review site, honestly, the login page, and put in your username. And at least for this year, if you put in the Welcome 21, you should be able to get in as long as you haven't gone in and already changed your password or anything like that. There is an option to reset your password if for some reason that does get changed, and you can get yourself sent that password link. And again, sometimes those automated emails and things like that will get filtered to the spam folder.
Thank you for answering both of those questions. And then for the students and parents that are on here, we all have a running sheet. If for, like they mentioned, perhaps the parent might get the email address and yours got blocked, but yours is the actual username. We have that list of what email address you used when you requested an account. So you can always reach out to get that from us. So I don't have any further questions, but again, I'm going to open it up to anyone else on the webinar. And it looks like we do have some people typing in.
Okay.
Oh, something else. All right, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, no problem. And just to kind of tie that up as well with the online proctor, if you were to take the test in the online format, then obviously that proctor looks a little bit different just because they're kind of guiding you through step by step. Once you do get to a section where you would normally have a break, then it will say, hey, do you want to take your break? You get X amount of time. You do have the option to skip that break, so should you so choose. But obviously I would take the breaks just to kind of mimic the actual experience, and because you probably would need it. I mean, take it if you get it. So moving on from the tests themselves.
We do have a question in the chat, Leslie.
Sure. Okay.
So the question is, what can you do if you haven't finished studying before your license expires?
Ooh, great question. You know what? Actually, so as far as we're concerned, as long as Missy and Dawn essentially give us the green light, then we can basically approve an extension for you.
That is correct. Once we get you started with Gear Up, we don't let you go until the end of that first year of college, in which case you wouldn't need this stuff anymore anyway. So not
Yep.
ACT and SAT anyway.
Yep.
That's a great question, Tammy.
Yeah.
I also want to remind our Clayton County students that we are not able to send you guys emails. And Princeton Review is not either. So if you sign up with your email address, your school-based email address, then you will not receive the email from Princeton Review.
Yeah, that's
just another email.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sleep.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that's another great call out. That there are certain school firewalls and things like that where we can't send an email no matter how hard we try. So either, like you were probably about to say, if you can use an email other than the school email, that'd be great, so that we would be able to have that open line of communication back and forth for things like account setup and stuff like that. Otherwise, Dawn, you can go ahead if you had some other kind of workarounds for that.
No, so the Gear Up Georgia email address is, again, what we prefer you guys use. And so that's going to get you able to log in, and the password is Gear Up GA, all caps, no spaces. So that's what we want you guys to use. And when Wesley is done, we're going to show you guys on our website, where you would go to find all that information.
All right. All right. So there are a couple of additional resources for you as well. Just some general resources and information around completing the practice test, including some of the things that I've already mentioned, is actually found here. So you'll see that we're under the test tabs, and then instead of just being under the your practice test, we actually go and take the test. If you go to everything you need to know, you guessed it, everything you need to know. So how to complete a practice test, including the step-by-step instructions, again, a lot of what I just mentioned, proctoring and what that looks like, and then tackling the essay, which especially now, we typically just skip. So just a lot of information there. And then the official test info as well, that we try to keep updated for how to register, how long it is, what's on it, and just kind of general about information for the SAT or ACT. And what I'm actually going to do now is switch over to what the ACT portal looks like. And you'll see it's also very similar. So it's very similar. It's just going to have some additional information here just because I took a quick mock test just to kind of fill in random answers so I could get a score here so you could see what that looks like. So in this case, with random answers, about a 14, I put a target in here for the ACT of about a 23. And then we've still got our list of colleges here on the right. Down at the bottom, you see there's no task for today, and that's actually because in our weekly view for the study prep that I did here, I actually had us gearing up for the April test, I believe, April 17th, something like that, test. And so in this case, it's spaced out a little bit differently. And if we were to go up to the test tab for ACT, which you'll all also have access to, you see we have slightly different, wow. We have slightly different tests here. And actually, I'm going to go back because this is what happens when you sign in twice on the same browser. Yeah, that's what I thought. So back to account home, and now just go into the portal proper here. There we go. So now if I click into tests, you'll see here's that test that I did the quick random answers on, and then the additional supplemental tests here, and the single section tests for ACT, which hopefully will also come back into play once ACT makes their announcement, perhaps in the next month or two, about some of the things they're gonna be rolling out here. We're thinking digitally, including the single section test that they were going to be offering last September. So keep these in mind for practicing just those particular skills as well. And then if we were to go to the reports tab, you will see any of the tests that you have taken. And you can break this down by your composite scores or individual section scores to be able to see your full report. In this case, this is what the report looks like. So it's similar to what you would get from the ACT, the official ACT test, whenever you take that test and then you get, if you apply to get that full report back, it's similar to what you get there, only it does have some additional information included with it. So here you will see both the STEM score, your overall composite score, and your breakdowns by subject. You will also see everything that you missed, what the correct answer was, and so on and so forth. In this case, if you click it, you actually get to see exactly what that question looked like, what you put, what the correct answer was, as well as an explanation for those particular questions. So it is very useful, and I definitely encourage everybody who takes a test to go back through and actually look at those questions that you missed and look at the question explanations that you've got there as well. You can view these by section. In this case, we're looking at English. Let's actually look at math. So if we look at this, we can see it just by section. In this case, just the 1 through 60 for the math section, or we can break it down by category. This way we can see where we missed the most. In this case, we got none of our right triangles questions correct. Oh no, what do we do? Well, we can take a look and see exactly what these questions look like, look at the explanation to see exactly what that looks like. And let's say we looked at these reports, we kind of got an idea for where our challenges lie and where our strengths lie. We can then want to break this down. We have some further kind of graphs and reporting functionality here that just kind of lets you know, okay, these are color coded by what's a big impact, a quick win for you, where you just have more room to grow, something that may be kind of a challenge area for you, or perhaps there's not enough data yet because you haven't taken enough tests with that particular question type in order for the algorithm to kind of give you some better information there. So in this case, if we look at algebra, we know that this hot pink color is going to be one of our big impact areas. And the big impact just means, hey, if we really work on that, it should make one of the biggest differences in that particular section score. And this will come back into play in the next tab that we'll get to, which is going to be the tab that you will want to spend the most time in. So lastly, on the reports, we just got a little goal tracker. which will keep track of various things. So this isn't just your testing scores, but also how many lessons you've completed, how many tests you've done, single section tests, how many daily goals you've met. So this is whenever it does offer you to take a particular lesson or module on a particular day, how many times have you gotten to do that? So all of that will be tracked here for you, as well as your distance to your target score. All right, so I said it would come back into play, and this is where it does. The Coursework tab. So this is the meat of everything that you'll be doing with the self-paced portal. The test is kind of your big tentpole place where you'll go to kind of measure everything that you've done so far and kind of give you some good check-in points as to how you're doing. But this is where you'll go for your typical lessons and drills and things like that. So since we have taken a test, we do have some information here for what will give us the most impact, what are some quick wins and things like that. So in this case, if we wanted to master apostrophes, this says it's a quick win for us. Whenever you click on one of these lessons, you have the option to either learn or practice. Learn is going to bring up actual lessons for you. Sometimes these are videos, sometimes these are guided PowerPoint slides and things like that, as if you're going through a class, a live class. And so in this case, we see a PowerPoint slide kind of leading us through apostrophes. We've got a video here that we'll skip for now, and you can kind of get a feel for what these lessons look like. And in this case, we'll hit submit. Probably going to get it wrong. It lets us know. We try again, submit. Oh no. Hey, there we go. So now you can move on, and that's how you'll progress through these particular lessons. Once you've done a lesson, you can go to the practice section, and this is where you have your actual drills. So if we were to launch the practice tab, now we come to what kind of looks like the online testing portal, where you can go through a series of questions, mark your answers, and then by the end, you're going to get an actual score. It'll let you know how many you got correct, how many you got wrong, how many you left blank. And you'll also get, again, those question explanations for any of the ones that you did miss. And you can always go back and retry drills even after you've completed them.
Wesley, we have another question in the chat.
Sure.
So a student wants to know, does the Princeton Review practice section connect with Khan if they use the same ID?
It does not. It does not.
I didn't think so, but I wanted you to answer that yourself.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, obviously, if we were partnered / affiliated with Khan, then I'm sure that would be something that we would do. Because for some later prep for any of you who might be getting into something like MCAT down the road, if anybody has any medical inclinations, then we do have, we partner with things like the LSAC website, which is, or that's LSAT related, but AAMC for the MCAT and things like that, to kind of pair back and forth between drills and tests that people do on various websites back to this particular site. But with Khan Academy at this time, we do not. Yeah. So this will be a separate, it will be kept and tracked separately. All right. You can see here again the color codes for all of the different lessons here. The secret sauce really is just going to be, these are going to be your strategies. So overall, how to work with the ACT as a whole, test taking strategies, tips and tricks, things like that, and then also broken down by section. So particular math strategies and things like that in terms of eliminating answers, using your answers to kind of guide you to what's going to be correct and things like that. That will all be found in the strategy section and typically be labeled as secret sauce. The big impact, we already went over. Quick wins makes sense, and then room to grow and challenge. Typically, we like to start with the quick wins and the big impacts and then kind of move on to the room to grow questions and the challenge questions. Typically, some of the challenge categories are going to be ones that you may have missed them, and you may have missed a few of them actually, but perhaps it's a particular question type that doesn't show up that often across the test, so it's not something that you particularly need to focus on as you start your prep.
We have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Does the SAT portion also have the incorrect answers explained? I'm guessing like the ACT portion.
Absolutely. Yep. It absolutely does. Yeah. So everything is going to be built really the same here. The only thing that's going to be a little bit different is that on the side, your sections will be different, just because obviously the SAT doesn't have a science section. And then the actual content involved here will be different, especially in things like the geometry and some of the things that are included on ACT, but not on the SAT as much. It'll change things like, in this case, while there is some geometry on the SAT, it's much more prevalent on the ACT. So you may have a big impact for some of these geometry questions here, but not on the SAT, and vice versa. So it'll change depending upon just kind of the structure of those tests, but the actual abilities that you'll have in terms of doing these lessons, those will look very similar, just with different content. As well as the drills, you'll be able to go in and do those, and it will look very similar. You'll still get your question reports and those explanations for them. It'll just be different questions that are specifically geared towards whichever test you're working in. All right, you can search for particular categories if you know you're specifically looking for something, and it will go ahead and find all the ones related to it. And you can, on the side here, just kind of click straight into, in this case, maybe data representation for science, to take you right to that particular section so that you can go through. And this is, again, I really want to highlight, this is really kind of like your meat and potatoes, so to speak, of your prep work, because you'll be able to go through here, do the lessons, do the drills, and continue to just hone your skills over and over, especially with this practice, again and again as you're going through. And this will actually keep your keep track of things like the questions per test. So in this case, working with radicals, it has the questions per test at about 0.75. That means there's not necessarily a radical question on every single test, which is another reason why it's just down here in the challenge category and not necessarily a high impact category. And so it kind of gives you an idea as far as where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. In this case, this has a good impact, 7 questions per test. So if you spend some time really nailing this, then you can see making a larger difference in your score. And I really suggest kind of paying attention to that, because especially whenever you're on a time crunch, say we were actually looking to take a March test, then we definitely want to kind of go through and find some of those areas where we can get some quick wins, just to kind of get our score up as quickly as possible, and then kind of work down from there. So we get those big impact questions, we get some of these quick wins, and then kind of work your way through from there. It's really the best suggestion I could give for how to work through this coursework at your own pace.
That was such helpful information, especially seeing approximate how many type of those questions are going to be on the exam. Mm-hmm. Wonderful strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I point out mostly because this is what I would do whenever I was tutoring with students for this sort of stuff anyway. So it's definitely good to know that you do have this same information already available to you. It's just kind of being aware of it, because I do know that this kind of gets lost just kind of sitting up there. So it's kind of nice to be aware that you have that information at your fingertips to kind of really kind of laser focus your prep instead of just kind of shooting in the dark. So, yeah. All right.
We have another question, and I think this may relate to how we initially set up the study plan. Okay. We had a student that was asking, would the platform show data to support if you studied a certain amount of time, or you put in a certain amount of work into it, could you increase like an extra 10 instead of it being the student deciding how much they want to study?
You know what? The answer is no, not yet, as a matter of fact. So now we're getting into some secrets, but essentially this is getting some updates. Most likely around March and April of this year, to essentially further expand some of the options that are available here, specifically around kind of the study planner. And that's one of the things that will be included at that time. At this time, no, there's no kind of like almost like a graph or anything like that would kind of show you you're currently studying this much. If you did this much more, you could hope to see, you know, X amount of growth in this particular category or things like that. It's not built into the website here. I'm definitely aware of some resources that just kind of have some information around, essentially some research has been done in terms of how grades improve based on the amount of time that is spent in each of these particular sections. But as far as kind of tailoring that and having that available here, it's not here yet.
And so when an update is made, are the students notified? Is there like a message when they log in, or will they receive the email?
Yeah, and in fact, usually there's going to be, so on that main portal page, and actually here as well is where it would come up. It would let you know kind of in advance that some updates will be that are being made, and then once the update is about to go live, the communication will also be sent out to anybody who can receive it, of course, in terms of detailing what the updates are for everybody that's already enrolled in products that will see some sort of changes or benefits from that. All right. Any other questions there, or for coursework, that coursework tab overall, anything like that?
I do. Can can you copy? So like if you pop up a question that a student, the explanation of why they got it wrong, it's just not clicking. Is there a way to copy that question? Because they all have tutor.com accounts where they could get a tutor to actually go through it with them step by step. So I was just wondering if the questions, if they are copy and paste compatible maybe.
Let's find out together. Yeah, you do have a couple of options, even beyond just the copying, which it looks like you can do here. Yep. So you can copy the text itself. One other thing that I like to do, and I know, especially since, by the way, a little sneak peek here, I will also be handling your tutor.com for Gear Up Georgia as well, very soon. Yeah, Kara said she was going to send out some information shortly. I had a meeting with her and told her that I'd be, you know, seeing you all today. But I guess I'm kind of spoiling the surprise now. But yes, you will have the ability to not only copy these and insert that into tutor.com, but since you have the ability to actually attach files there as well, if you wanted to, especially for a more visual question, you could just take a screenshot if you're on a computer or technically even on a phone, just kind of take a screenshot and then attach that as well. If you're going to go into a tutoring session, that would be great, actually. I mean, this actually pairs really well with that. And one of the things that I like to say in regards to the tutor.com is that going into tutor.com's quizzes section also kind of gives you kind of a direct link to, hey, I missed this question, let me meet now with a tutor, and it goes ahead and automatically fills that in from that platform. In this case, yeah, you could copy it or take a screenshot of it and paste it into your tutor.com meet now function and do it that way.
Okay, and we just got another text come in. I feel like maybe you hit it with the progress of impact and then the way you would go through this, but are there any shortcuts for those students that are already really high achieving, looking at extremely competitive schools, to go from like 95 percentile to 97. Like, is there anything on here that just could get you over that little hump that they're, going crazy over?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that little hump. So a couple of things. So this is always, it's always a tricky spot, honestly. Whenever you're, I guess in the case of like ACT, for instance, maybe you are sitting at the 30 hump and you want to get to a 32 or 33, or maybe even you're at a 32 and you want to get to a 34 if you're really kind of pushing for it, or perhaps even higher and things like that. So one of the things there is I would still really recommend, especially at that level, to get in and do some practice tests. Not only just for what it's going to be able to give you for these big impacts and things like that, but also just because oftentimes when you get to that level, repetition actually does help, especially when if you have it kind of narrowed down by section, just because getting used to those particular questions to the point where you see the formula for how they're creating their questions, and then you kind of get ahead of the game. So immediately once you see a question, you know exactly what type of question that is. And that's kind of really that next level ability that you want to get to, is one, just kind of getting that content down first. Once you get the content down, then you want to go in and be able to get that more consistent so that you're consistently getting those questions correct. And then once you get that down, you really want to start knowing what types of questions these are. So even when you look at these different categories under here, knowing when you're looking at, in one case, maybe identifying verb tense question and what that question looks like and how they're asked, helps you with knowing exactly what the answer is going to be and knowing it a lot faster. And that's going to be oftentimes very useful for reducing your kind of simple mistakes that tends to come along at that particular level. Is like, the content, but you just made a simple mistake. And so that's going to help there. And I don't have per se an example here, just because I don't have the actual testing data to support it. But let's say that you did go in and you scored really high. This will adjust to assist you there. So obviously, if we're scoring a 32 already and we just need to get to a 34, then things like your big impact or your quick win will be specifically tailored to, where you're already scoring. So this will kind of help to guide you in terms of the things that will kind of make the biggest difference for you, depending upon where you are. And the more tests that you get in, the better the tool will be, just all around. So that's why I say it'll be good to just kind of go in and do a few practice tests. Maybe, you do one practice test, do another practice test, because there will be some questions that will be different on that test, especially when it comes to math, and especially on the ACT. There's just a wide range of math topics that can be covered, and some questions only show up once every 4 tests. So it's a really good idea to just kind of get in there and do as much as possible, especially when it comes to the math. English is usually one that kind of goes up the quickest and earliest on, just because once you do kind of finally get the grammar rules down and a sense of how they ask those questions, that tends to come, and then everything just kind of starts to click with that. Plus the timing for that's usually pretty okay for most students. It's the math where you just have so much content. Maybe you got a matrix question, and on a lot of tests you don't have the matrix question and things like that, or different types of graphs that you may be asked to look at, like a box and whiskers plot that only shows up once in a blue moon. Things like that, you just want to kind of get that repetition in as much as possible so that you can see those questions, so that you aren't surprised by it and you can kind of answer them much quicker in that particular time limit. And then specifically for reading and science, oftentimes that comes down to just timing. Obviously, there's a lot of strategy in play there in terms of how you're choosing your answers and how you're reading those questions. And once you do kind of figure out that secret sauce for how they ask those questions, you realize that it's really the same thing over and over again from test to test, which is just another reason why the repetition really comes into play. But when you're testing, or sorry, when you're prepping with that repetition at that level, you really want to look at it almost as if you're the person creating the test. If you look at it in that way, you'll get a lot more use out of that repetition versus just kind of going in and just taking the test, right? So you want to go in and say, okay, look at how they asked this question, the types of answers that they gave, how those answers relate to each other. You know, oftentimes it's kind of the difference, right, between on a punctuation question, you may get an answer that has a period, an answer that has a semicolon, an answer that has a comma and a fanboy. And knowing that if you see those three, it can't be either of those answers. It's got to be that last answer, just because of how the grammar rules work and things like that. So just kind of getting to that second level of how things look is going to be really important. So that's where I say it's really best to kind of dig in and start to kind of look at the test in a different way. And that's where you'll really start to see some of those those gains that'll kind of get you over those kind of high score humps and things like that. Another big tip I would say would be actually teaching somebody else to do it, whether it's your parents, whether it's a family member, it doesn't matter, friends, peers. Teaching somebody else how to do these particular problems will also go a really long way to just making sure that you have a really full understanding of it. Because that's what I typically did when I was working with students. Any super high performing students, I would just have them teach me questions. You know, we'd come in and we'd meet, and then they would teach me how to do stuff. And I would actually pretend I was a student, that I have questions, I didn't know how to do things, and just kind of see how they did, because you have to learn how to identify questions, how to answer them in different ways. And that's just going to give you the ability to go into this test and almost be excited because it's just so easy for you. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. But I would say ultimately it's going to be repetition for making sure that the algorithms are giving you all the information that you need here. And then also just kind of changing your mindset for how you're attacking the test.
So we got one last question in terms of like study techniques and test techniques and the platform. Mm-hmm. And you may have mentioned this because I heard you say timing. Will it give you timing suggestions? Is that part of the secret sauce based on if you spend a lot of time on certain questions and didn't get to finish a part of a section, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're talking about like overall like timing suggestions. Yes. They do. Yeah, there's going to be overall timing suggestions for the test as a whole, as well as for each individual section, because it will look a little bit different. And obviously, like I said, like reading and science are really big on like that timing. You have 40 questions in 35 minutes. And so that's obviously a big time crunch, especially when you have to read 4 to 7 passages and things like that, right? So yeah, especially reading and science, timing is a big portion of what's being worked on there. For math, it does, again, give you kind of strategies around how to navigate through the test and kind of make sure that you're spending your time on questions that make sense. One of the things, for instance, with the ACT math is that those questions do progressively get harder throughout the test. And obviously you want to then make sure that you're spending less time in those first 20 questions. And so one of the things that you can do there is to, maybe you're doing some single section tests and you're just working on getting through the first 20 questions as quick as you can, but with as high of an accuracy as you can. Because once you get to the point where you can absolutely bank on getting at least 20, those first 20 questions right, I mean, that's an automatic, what, depending on the test, maybe 17, 20, if you were to fill out the rest of the questions just with random answers, which is, yeah, a big difference for a lot of students. So you can focus even just on those early questions that are easier and work on getting through them faster, but also with a high accuracy. And that way, when you do get to some of the more complex or more difficult questions, you've got more time to spare and can kind of dig in a little bit more there. And so like there's strategies kind of built around things like that as well for each section. And yes, that'll be mostly housed in this secret sauce section as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last but not least is the resources tab. This is going to be largely just kind of going over a lot of things that we've already talked about here today, but again, it's good to kind of have it in another spot for you all. Just kind of an overall getting started section, some more notes on the practice tests and self-proctoring, scoring your tests, some things specifically for what to expect on the test day itself, the official test day. We have a test day checklist, things that you want to be sure that you haven't forgotten to do, including like what to do when you wake up, the breakfast that you should have, and the fact that you should have breakfast so you're not hungry and things like that. Gives you a list of what you need to take with you, just all sorts of little additional information that you'll just want to know for the test itself. So we have that there, as well as you'll see this here, thinking about the SAT, and then on the SAT page, you'll see thinking about the ACT here in its place, which kind of leads you to the structure of the opposite tests, so you can kind of see the differences between the two. And you can also take a little quiz here just to kind of find out which test might be better for you. And since this is usually a big ticket question for a lot of families anyway, in general, I like to think of SAT versus ACT in terms of what your prep time looks like. If you have a lot of time for prep, maybe you're getting started early, ACT actually tends to do pretty well just because the way that those questions are asked are a little bit more straightforward than what's given on the SAT. And so over time, with enough time to kind of really take in and learn the content, typically students can do a bit better on the ACT than the SAT. However, that also kind of depends on where you're starting, right? If you're already starting with a really high SAT score and you're really struggling with the timing of the ACT, then obviously we would probably lean you towards the SAT. But it's really good to get in here and try both, which is great because you have both portals available to you. So you can get in and see kind of how it feels for you. Because yes, the timing on the ACT is going to be tough, but the way those questions are asked are going to be a bit more straightforward. So usually it kind of balances out. And there are ways to prep around both of those challenges, right? So there are ways to get better at the timing, and there's ways to get better at realizing what the SAT is asking you for particular questions and things like that. So you can kind of get in and dig in either by taking this particular quiz to figure out which might be better for you, or I would suggest just kind of going in and taking a full length test of both and seeing how you feel about it and how you scored and going from there as well. Lastly, planning for college section, which is again is just some kind of college admission advice and things like that for finding colleges and the rankings. And this questions and concerns, honestly, just email me or Missy and she'll get it to me. I wouldn't even worry about this unless it is very specifically a content error, in which case you can send it to contenterrors@review.com. I can also send it over to them. And we do typically just kind of keep a list of anything that might have been an error, whether it's a question that says it's right and it's actually wrong, or just typos and things like that, so that they can get fixed. Okay, that was a lot of me talking. Are there any further questions across any of the student portal experience, logging in, the resources available, anything like that?
We had a question about secret sauce explanation. Is there like a definition or a list of items that you typically find in the secret sauce? Or is it a hodgepodge?
Secret sauce, like here, the topic filters? Yeah, so as you'll see here, just if I kind of like quickly, if I can grab this guy on the side here. Yeah, if I quickly scroll down, the only time you actually see secret sauce is when we're looking at strategies. So in this case, secret sauce for the writing strategy. It just means that it doesn't fall into any particular ACT or SAT content category. It's more looking at particular strategies, right? So in this case, this will be pacing, a lot of different strategies that you'll be able to do for the test itself. So this is what we call secret sauce. It's really just another word for strategies, right? Anything that's going to pertain to strategies for the test, like test taking tips and strategies and things like that, that will fall under the secret sauce category.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if we don't have any further questions from the participants, I was going to show you guys where some of the links are to other resources you might need in order to get on here or to supplement it with tutor.com. So I was going to show you where you can get your email address. If some of you have already requested SAT fee waivers, I'll show you where that is if you have not, the tutor.com. And then also, if for some reason you're on here and you don't have an account, what link you use to request your test prep account. So if we don't have any further questions, Wesley, I just want to say thank you very, very much. Wonderful information in terms of the portal, planning, tips. Just thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. And again, always just kind of reach out. Let me know if anything does come up, or again, if you're not able to get into your account, things like that, we'll get you squared away. No worries.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna steal the screen and I'm gonna hop over. Oops, didn't realize I was in all that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, guys. So I'm going to just show you where some of our items live. Right now, we're completely operating virtual, so your requests and your communication and getting on platforms are what we consider virtual. We did talk about the Gear Up Georgia username, email address. If you do not know what yours is, you would click this link, and it's super easy, 5 questions. And we get this, and within 24 hours, we shoot you an email. Make sure you put in the correct email, not your school email, so it's not blocked. We'll send you what your Gear Up Georgia email address is. With that, you can.
Would you mind going back one more step to show them how you got to that page? There was a question about how you got there.
So students, all students, parents, you are going to want to live right here in the virtual services. Unfortunately, resources is a little ambiguous. That's our educator resources. We have asked to get educator put there, but students, this is virtual services, and we want you to go here. So after you click on it, you'll see the top part is all of our virtual services we have for you, our online learning platforms for test prep or college visits, everything you could want for exploration of and prep for college. So that was the username, your email address retrieval. The reason you may want that is you might want to use your Gear Up Georgia email address to set up or request your test prep, and you may want it to log into your tutor.com account. I know I personally would be copying and pasting and taking screenshots of questions if I couldn't get into or couldn't get a certain question right, or the explanation of the answer didn't make sense to me. So you would log in using your Gear Up Georgia email address. Your password, everyone's password is Gear Up, GA, all together, all capitalized. And you literally would just click this button, get a tutor now. And like, so for example, he was having trouble with geometry. So we would do math, we would come over here, we'd hit geometry, you could hit your grade. And then he was having trouble with right triangles. So you would put that in there and you would hit connect now, and you would be matched with a tutor that is certified and has taken comprehensive exams in geometry. You also can do some prep for AP exams. We did have AP mentioned in the chat. And then we have some practice quizzes where you also can do subject areas as well. So I just want to show you guys tutor.com real quickly, where you can get your email address. Here is the SAT fee waiver request, very similar, a questionnaire. We do have some acknowledgments and information about the SAT waiver, if you're interested in that. And then the test prep is right here, the self-paced. That's what we just went over, the self-paced request form. So if you don't have a self-paced account and you went through this webinar and you're like, I need that, you would fill out this form. And then we are getting ready to promote our spring semester prep classes. This is with actual Princeton review instructors. We have a few different ones scheduled. You can, let me try to zoom in. Oh.
And Missy, while you're zooming, there's another question in here. The student said they filled out the SAT form to make their self-paced account, but they got an email saying the fee waiver request was on hold and they didn't need a fee waiver. So they said they were just a little confused. And I'm thinking that they may have clicked on the wrong link.
Okay. I'll save the chat and check the students' registrations.
Okay.
These are the upcoming Princeton Review instructor-led classes that we have scheduled for spring semester.
Just screenshot that.
That's
the keys. Well, you need to know the prep. I know. You
will you mute?
Yes.
I can't get to it.
Sure. If we could get everybody to keep your phones on mute, please. If you're not asking a question, that'd be great. Thank you.
So right now, the self-paced accounts is what we have if you are taking the March exam. These ACT courses that you see here lead up to the April, I think it's the April 17th exam. And then these SAT classes you see right here lead up to the May exam. So we do have these scheduled out pretty far. These are a 3-hour class that really goes over tips and techniques and strategies that prep you right before the exam. So you go in, you feel a little more confidence. It gives you more of an overview of what to expect. And then these are these are actual 6 classes, and it's more of an in-depth, what we would consider a course with a Princeton Review instructor. You do have multiple practice tests. So we do have a few options for you guys if you want to also, with your self-paced accounts, get into a class, a webinar class with an actual instructor walking you through and providing additional information. And then lastly, I wanted to show you guys, just in case, we do keep some of this information that we think would be helpful for you guys on our website in terms of test prep and test date. So like there was the deadline. I know you guys are looking at future test dates, and we put information, links to where you would register. And then we also have those classes that I mentioned. I think, yeah, that's the first ACT course. We have those living on our calendars. And the last thing I wanted to show you on our calendars, and I think Dawn was going to put some information in the chat, is since we have you, we wanted to let you know that we have ran across a very wonderful opportunity. We are doing a competitive essay competition that is due on March the 5th, and it is sponsored by the Scholarship Academy. The Common app is actually going to read and score and select the winners of the competition, and there is a $500 scholarship that will be given away to a Gear Up student. We'll also have a $50 gift card. We have some Common app where they're involved in the reading. They will be giving out some swag, and then if you wanted to participate there, I wanted to bring close attention to this down here. The Scholarship Academy, you can go ahead and submit your essay. This is the essay question. It is a Common App question to get you guys ready for when you're applying next year. I feel like most people on here are 11th graders. If you would like to go ahead and kind of start on working on your essay and schedule an appointment with the Scholarship Academy, they will take appointments up through March 3rd just to review your essay with you to get it ready to submit by this March 5th deadline. So I really wanted to bring you guys attention to this. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity we're able to provide. So thankful for Scholarship Academy. And it goes hand in hand. We really want you guys to get these great ACT and SAT scores, not only so you can get into the college of your choice, but we really want to see you guys getting those Hope scholarships, the Zell Millers, institutional scholarship. And the more those scores go up, the more the scholarship dollars and offers go up as well. And then we also, besides that, because this was a test prep webinar, there are other ways to get scholarships, such as opportunities like this. So we also want to keep that in your mind as well. So I believe that's all I wanted to show on the website. Again, if you need to reach somebody in terms of, hey, I don't remember what email address I used when I signed up for test prep, you can go here, get to your program coordinator. You know, if for some reason you're new or you have some new school coordinators, their email addresses are here. And then to get us at the central office, you can always just complete this form over to the right, and we'll get your email. So if anybody has any further questions, Dawn and I will answer those, and then we'll be ready to do the giveaway for today.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, well, thank you, Missy. Thank you, Wesley. Thank you guys for joining us. And so we're now going to do our door prize for the night. And so the winner of our door prize is Sarah Holly from Muskogee County, Northside High School. Sarah, are you still with us? You're gonna have to come off mute. Yes, hi, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you just send us an email at gearupgeorgia@usg.edu with your mailing address and your phone number, and also just your school and your district, and we will get that right out to you.
Okay, so thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you everyone for joining. You're all winners with all this great information that you have. And Sarah, you're getting a book bag full of a Gear Up book bag full of supplies and a TI-84 calculator that you will be able to use on the SAT or ACT, whichever one that you decide to sign up for. So, so congratulations. Thanks, everyone. Be sure to reach out to us if you have any questions at all. And when you're in doubt about anything, just go to the website, gearupgeorgia.org/contact. And we will connect you to whatever you need to get started. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.